Picture this. You've got Maria José, right? She's in 19th century Brazil on this beautiful farm, birds, flowers, everything looks idyllic. But she's there, under a tree, just crying, completely miserable, feeling totally stuck. It makes you wonder, what could possibly make someone that unhappy in a place like that?
It's a really stark image, isn't it? That contrast grabs you straight away. You just know there's a deeper story there.
Totally. And that's exactly what we're digging into today. We're exploring these fascinating source materials. You brought excerpts from a novel, Espinhos do Tempo, which means Thorns of Time.
Mm-hmm.
And it really delves into the inner world of this woman, Maria José, and all these sort of hidden forces shaping her life, and everyone else's too, it seems.
Right. And our goal here, is to use these sources as our map. We want to understand the struggles Maria José and the others are facing, the complex relationships, and maybe most importantly, unpack the really surprising explanations the sources give for why things are happening.
Explanations that go way beyond just the obvious.
Exactly. It's a journey through duty, desire, and these kind of unexpected influences that the text suggests are pulling the strings.
So let's dive right into Maria José's situation at the start. The sources make it clear she's deeply unhappy. She's married to Demerval, but it wasn't really her choice, was it? More like obeying her parents.
Yes, exactly. And the text paints this picture of a really oppressive routine in their marriage, like these mandatory piano sessions 3 times a week.
Oh, yeah. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays.
Right. And she has to play what Demerval picks, and he insists on playing his violin along with her.
And she hates it. The sources use words like detestable, boring. Maybe it's his playing, maybe it's the whole setup, but she feels resentful, and it sticks with her even after.
And Demerval himself, his character is key here. The sources describe him as seeing love as basically obedience, like her will has to bend to his.
He sounds pretty rigid.
Very elegant, respected socially, sure, but completely intolerant of different opinions. Gets offended, irritated. The text even says he confuses feelings when things don't go his way. And even his, calmness starts grating on her after a while.
So Maria José is really caught, isn't she? Because the sources say she actually did learn to love him after marrying him out of duty, but then she feels terribly guilty for not liking the same things he does.
Mm-hmm.
She judges herself for it, thinking she's, ungrateful or even wicked because her feelings don't align perfectly with his.
Yeah, it really shows the weight of the societal pressure and this sense of personal duty she's carrying. She's trying to square her real feelings, affection for him, but also her own personality with what she thinks she should be feeling.
In all this pressure, it kind of builds up until, boom, there's this moment of rebellion over medicine of all things.
Right. Demerval tells her to take some foul-smelling medicine, and something just snaps in her. The sources describe this sudden wave of revolt. She actually pushes him away.
Tells him to leave her alone, which for him must have been shocking.
Completely unexpected. Leaves him speechless, according to the text.
And what happens after that confrontation is where things get really strange, and the story pivots, doesn't it? Demerval gets sick, mysteriously sick.
Yes, the doctors are baffled. No physical cause. It's described as this extreme despondency, weakness, just profoundly unwell, but nothing medical science at the time could explain.
And this is where Zefa steps in, Maria José's loyal enslaved woman.
Mm-hmm. And Zefa has an immediate explanation rooted in her own beliefs. She says Demerval is, quote, possessed by a spirit and needs prayer.
Zefa even links it back, saying prayer helped Maria José before, suggesting maybe she had similar spiritual issues. But Maria José, initially at least, is having none of it.
Right, total skepticism. She calls Zefa's ideas stories, obsessions. It really highlights the clash of worldviews there.
And while all this is going on, Maria José finds some peace on the farm. The sources are clear, the farm air is good for her, she feels better there. But Demerval?
Nope. He insists they go back to the city, dismisses her feelings entirely, says she'd only think she's better.
So, once again, she's not heard. She has to give in, and it just crushes her spirits again. Her needs are just secondary.
But then the dynamic shifts quite a bit when Menelau arrives, Demerval's brother.
Right. And Menelau, at first, he's also kind of skeptical about Demerval's weird illness.
Yeah.
But what's different, and the sources subtly show this, is how he interacts with Maria José.
Yeah, unlike Demerval, Menelau actually seems to listen to her. He asks how she's doing, shows real concern. It's a quiet contrast, but it's definitely there.
And he doesn't come alone. He brings his wife, Maria Antonia.
Oh, yes. And she is immediately set up as Maria José's opposite. Hates the farm, demanding, rude, especially the text notes towards the enslaved people. Zefa gets singled out by her.
So, instant tension there.
Yeah.
And kind of creates the backdrop for something else. Unexpected. Despite everything the family ties, being married, a connection starts forming between Maria José and Menelau.
The sources handle it quite delicately, this developing bond between them.
But it doesn't stay secret. Maria Antonia gets suspicious, and then she actually accuses them publicly.
Right, which just shows you the power of gossip and the social constraints back then. Maria Antonia even threatens to tell their parents. It's a huge deal.
Leads to a major blow-up. Menelau flatly denies it, calls her ideas demented, and when she demands he leave with her, he refuses. Says he's staying until Demerval's situation is sorted.
So she leaves alone. The tension is just palpable. And into this mess steps another key figure, Eduardo.
Menelau's friend, described as estudioso de esas cosas.
A scholar of these things, meaning spiritual matters.
And Eduardo's arrival is a game changer. He looks at Demerval's situation and says it's not just sickness, it's a strange influence conducting events.
Okay, so that confirms it. It's not just in Zefa's head. There's something unseen, some force actively involved here.
And to understand that force, they need Bentinho, another enslaved person on the farm.
Right. The sources say Bentinho has psychic abilities, these percepções. He's sensitive to these spiritual undercurrents.
So through these spiritual sessions that Eduardo leads, it becomes clearer. Demerval is being influenced, maybe even, as the source puts it, bewitched by spirits. And there's that moment where Maria José herself gets affected during a session.
Yeah, feels like she's not herself, says things she wouldn't normally say. It shows how powerful this influence is supposed to be.
And it's during these sessions they introduce this idea of past lives.
That Demerval's condition, his weakness, might actually stem from enemies he made in past lives. Eduardo explains this framework where God lets old enemies meet again to sort things out, hopefully through forgiveness.
Whoa, hang on. So this illness the doctors couldn't figure out.
Yeah.
It might be spiritual payback from a past life. That completely reframes everything.
It does. It suggests the problems aren't just about this life, but are echoes from previous existences needing a whole different kind of resolution.
And exploring this spiritual angle leads to probably the most shocking twist involving Zefa and Bentinho.
Yeah. We know Zefa is incredibly loyal to Maria José, right? Since childhood, basically. Adored her mistress, and instantly disliked Demerval, worried he'd make Maria José unhappy.
And Bentinho, the one with the psychic gifts, he's in love with Zefa, wants her attention, wants to be important to her.
Okay, so here's the bombshell from the sources. Bentinho, urged on by Zefa, was using his abilities, the text uses the word mandingado, like a kind of spiritual manipulation, to keep Demerval sick.
Wait, they were keeping him sick on purpose. Why on earth would they do that?
It's complex, but their motive, however misguided, was tied to Maria José. Bentinho wanted Zefa's love. Zefa, in her fierce loyalty, genuinely believed that Demerval being ill was the only way to free Maria José from this miserable marriage. They thought they were helping her.
Wow.
The text even shows Zefa panicking when Demerval starts getting better, telling Bentinho they need to get rid of Eduardo because he's figuring things out.
So their actions, coming from this place of love and protection, were actually blocking Demerval's recovery and messing with the whole spiritual situation.
Precisely. And what's interesting is Eduardo's reaction when he finds out. He doesn't just lash out. He explains it was their ignorance of spiritual laws that led them astray. He points out the harm they caused, even with good intentions.
But he also says Demerval wasn't just a passive victim.
Right. He mentions Demerval had his own parcela de responsabilidad, a share of the blame, because his pride and intolerance in the past made him vulnerable to these negative influences in the first place.
That's a more nuanced way to look at it. It's not just black and white.
Definitely adds layers. Suggests even victims might play a part in their own circumstances, according to this view.
Okay, so after this intervention, Demerval does start to get better. But he's different.
Very different. The sources describe him changing from that rigid guy into someone really sensitive, dependent, emotional, almost overly grateful.
And Maria José finds this change kind of difficult, even exhausting.
Yeah, the text notes she struggles to deal with this weaker version of her husband.
But sadly, this changed. Demerval doesn't stick around. He starts reverting back to his old, intolerant self. And this leads directly to the tragedy.
He gets obsessed with harassing Neno, a formerly enslaved man Maria José had hired.
Right, even though Neno is free now, working for Maria José, Demerval can't let it go. He persecutes him relentlessly. Maria José tried to stop it, but
it escalates into a physical fight, and during that struggle, Demerval falls and dies. It's tragic, and Maria José reflects, as the source says, that he basically ran towards that tragedy.
His own actions led him there.
In a way, yes. And his death, while obviously a shock, becomes a turning point for Maria José. She grieves, but there's also this clear understanding of his part in his own fate.
And she doesn't collapse. She finds strength, decides to run the farm, raise her kids, prove she can do it after he always dismissed her ideas.
Exactly. She steps up.
Then, sometime later, Menelau comes back.
He does. Arrives at the farm. There's an emotional reunion with Maria José and the kids, especially Romualdo. But he can't stay long. He has duties back in Rio, and there's still his difficult marriage to Maria Antonia.
And the sources fill us in on what Menelau went through while he was away too, right? Some mission in France, political intrigue, getting imprisoned.
Yeah, serious trials. He was caught between Republican plots and loyalty to the emperor, ended up imprisoned on some remote island, so he returns carrying all that.
And his home life is still a mess. Maria Antonia is described as superficial, uninterested in their son, Diomedes, or anything deep. Infidelity is mentioned.
Right. And Menelau is really wrestling with his sense of duty to her.
Yeah.
He even tries to introduce her to spiritual ideas, hoping it might help her, but she's not interested. Eventually, the sources say she gets sick and dies.
And their son, Diomedes.
He's introduced as quiet, close to his father, and importantly, he starts getting interested in spiritualism himself, reading O Livro dos Espíritos.
Ah, the Spirits book.
Exactly, and that understanding actually helps him process his difficult relationship with his mother, make sense of her behavior, gives him some clarity.
Okay, so Maria José is now a widow, finding her own way. Menelau eventually becomes a widower too, after fulfilling his duties to Maria Antonia and Diomedes. They've both navigated these huge obstacles. It feels like the stage is finally set.
It is. For the core revelation, the real spiritual climax of the story, according to these sources, Eduardo organizes this major spiritual meeting.
With who? Maria José, Menelau.
Romualdo, Bentinho, and critically, the spirit of Demerval is also present.
Wow. Okay. And what happens?
A massive truth bomb drops. Romualdo. He's Menelau's son, not Demerval's.
Oh my goodness. How does Romualdo react?
It's a huge shock, obviously, and initially Demerval's spirit, still angry, influences him to reject Menelau.
But there's more, isn't there? The past life connection comes back.
Yes. This is where they uncover the root of Demerval's spirit's bitterness. In a past life, Menelau, as Raul, and Maria José, as Isabel, were lovers, and they abandoned Demerval, who is a woman named Eleonora then, and her children.
He abandoned her.
Yes, causing immense suffering. And Eleonora, in her pain, vowed revenge. That vow, that pain carried over.
So that's why Demerval's spirit was so angry, why it was influencing his illness in this life. It was payback for that past life betrayal.
That's the explanation given in the sources. The spiritual meeting becomes a confrontation. Demerval's spirit gets to vent all that bitterness, but then something shifts.
Wow.
Through Eduardo's guidance, and crucially, by seeing the spirits of Eleonora, his past self, and also Maria Antonia, who also suffered in her own way, he starts to see the bigger picture. He hears their struggles, understands the cycle of pain, and he chooses forgiveness.
He lets go of the anger, the need for revenge.
He does, releases his attachment to it all. And Bentinho, watching this clairvoyantly, sees this light, sees spirits helping Demerval move on. It validates the whole spiritual process.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So what's the aftermath of this spiritual intervention?
Well, Maria José feels emotional but peaceful. Menelau feels remorse for the past life stuff, but is determined to be strong now. Romualdo, after struggling, eventually accepts Menelau as his father. That relationship heals.
So it all ties together. The sources show how understanding these spiritual laws, past lives, spirit influence, and especially forgiveness. That was the key.
Absolutely. It resolved conflicts that seemed impossible, conflicts that spanned lifetimes.
And it highlights that Maria José and Menelau couldn't just get together whenever they wanted. Their love was real, the sources say, but they had to fulfill their duties first. Her widowhood, his obligations to Maria Antonia and Diomedes, her passing, those had to happen.
Yes, the idea of fulfilling duties, settling those, let's call them karmic accounts, is really strong in the narrative. Only then were they free.
And it really emphasizes the role of that spiritual knowledge from Eduardo and Bentinho in making sense of it all and enabling the resolution.
Definitely. Without that dimension, the problems might have remained tangled forever.
So the story wraps up with Demerval's spirit finding peace. And Maria José and Menelau, older now, but finally free to be together, having navigated just immense challenges.
And learned huge lessons about duty, forgiveness, and how spirits are connected across time according to this narrative. It presents a worldview where our current struggles might just be echoes, chances to heal old wounds.
It really makes you think. As you listen to this deep dive, processing this story from the sources, Maybe the question to chew on is, what hidden connections might link your past, maybe even past lives, if you entertain that idea, to the challenges you're facing right now?
And how might looking at things through that kind of lens potentially change how you approach them?
Yeah. This exploration of Thorns of Time definitely leaves you wondering if some of our toughest obstacles aren't just random noise, but maybe part of a larger story, waiting for us to understand and maybe forgive.